Hello, everyone. This is Lauren Steiner, and welcome to tonight's edition of the Robust Opposition. This is a first for me, 2 shows in one day on the same topic. The first was a live stream of a rally today on Charlotte Street in front of the Starbucks, because the Charlotte Street Starbucks is the first store in Asheville that is going for a union. And I have with me tonight 2 of the organizers, Madeline Robanna, who is up at the top there. Hi, Madeline.
Hi.
And Jen Hampton, who's not actually with Starbucks, but she's with the Asheville Food and Beverage Workers. Hi, Jen.
Howdy.
And also I have with me tonight Olivia Lewis and Grace Marvell, who are the 2 lead organizers of the Starbucks in Boone, North Carolina, which is about an hour and a half from here. And they were so kind as to come and speak at the rally and now be on my show. They are the first Starbucks in the entire state of North Carolina, so far the only Starbucks that has successfully unionized. And we're going to be talking about that on the show tonight with these lovely ladies. And we're going to get right to it by talking about the working conditions at Starbucks. Because Jen, you talked earlier about how you used to work for Starbucks and it used to be a lot better, but things have obviously gone downhill from here. So why don't we start with you, Olivia? Talk about the working conditions that you guys were faced with that caused you to want to start this union.
A lot of it started with the pandemic and the way that Starbucks responded to just this drastic change in our lives. And we just kind of really began to feel exactly how indispensable we actually are. And that was kind of a planting seed, at least for us at our store. And things finally escalated when labor hours were cut so severely that we have been struggling on the floor. We've been burnt out. We've been basically just not given the resources that we need to do our jobs. And in turn, we're also not given enough resources to survive outside of work.
Anything that you would like to add to that, Grace?
Yeah, so like Olivia said, at the start of the pandemic was kind of what set things off, what set the ball rolling. So when the pandemic started, Starbucks gave us catastrophe pay. And then when they got rid of it, they did not offer it for the following spikes in COVID. So that one was really, we felt very undervalued as their employees. And that's about it.
Okay, Madeline, can you talk about is there anything you would like to add to this conversation about working conditions at Starbucks that you've experienced at the Asheville store?
Sure. I think the majority of it has already been said, but one issue for me is I was hired in October, and I was not working at the store that I'm working at now, but I was in Asheville, and I was promised during hiring that I would get a raise in January. That was only available for shifts, and it's arguable to what extent it was actually given even for shifts. So from the date I was hired, I was not being treated with respect and honesty because of the pandemic and understaffing. They just wanted me there. Most recently, our issues have been getting our hours cut, not getting the hours that are promised. We were promised card tips when I was hired on, and that has not changed. And I would also say that our benefits are okay, but our pay is really low, and we keep being promised that it's going to change, and it's just getting pushed back and likely not happening.
Okay. Excuse me. I was sharing the show. Sorry about that. So let's talk to you back to the Boone organizers. about, were you motivated to start this union by the other Starbucks stores that you saw? And when did you first become aware that the Starbucks stores were unionizing? Was it as far back as Buffalo?
For me, yes.
And what was your initial thoughts about that when you saw that happening? Did you ever think like, oh, we could do this here?
For me, I heard about it and I thought it was interesting, but I didn't really know much about unions to begin with. I don't really think a lot of our team really did. I know that Grace has a solid history in it, but I personally had a lot of education to go through. And so it took a while for me personally to kind of get on board. There's been like little whispers here and there for the last 1 or 2 years that I've worked there. And but it wasn't until these like labor cuts this past quarter at the beginning of this year that I really kind of started to take it seriously and looked to the stores in Buffalo to look what they were fighting for, to see why they were doing what they were doing. And from there, I was like, hey, I think that's what I want too. And started looking into more about what unions are about and the benefits that they carry. And I've grown more passionate, and I'm really confident behind the movement that we've started and the decisions that we've made.
How about you, Madeline? Were you inspired by the early union efforts in Buffalo and after?
Absolutely. I think that as soon as I found out about it on the news, I was hoping to be able to emulate that in my store. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but knowing that it was an option was enough to make me want to get started.
Now let's talk about the steps that you guys took. First of all, did you feel it was important to establish a leadership team before approaching everybody else at the store? Anyone from Boone can speak first on that.
Yeah, it was absolutely necessary to form a leadership team. So we were the ones who kind of compiled all the information on, say, what a union is, what the benefits are, and the anti-union tactics that would be implemented against us. So we were the ones who got that together, distributed it to our partners, and just kind of kept things going, organizing, getting signatures for the petition, and communicating with our barista contact in Buffalo, getting a lawyer, and eventually, like, leading up to the election, it's been very helpful to have an organized body to kind of get everyone together and make sure they went out and voted.
Now, I've been reading that and seeing also on Twitter some videos that have been posted that the unionizing effort really creates a family feeling amongst the workers that probably they didn't have before, even though Howard Schultz likes to call everybody partners. Can any of you speak to that?
Could you repeat the question? I'm so sorry.
That the unionizing effort makes you feel more like a family, the solidarity that you all feel more than before.
Versus what Howard Schultz is saying, that it's tearing us apart. Is that what you're asking?
You can address that too.
I definitely have learned a lot about my coworkers that I didn't know before, in a really positive way. It's opened up doors to conversations that we would have not had otherwise. And so it has brought us all closer together. We definitely feel a lot more bonded. And it's been overall a really great thing. I mean, we were already a pretty close store, but this has brought us even closer together.
Do you have anything to add to that, Madeline?
I would say similar. I just got the opportunity to learn more about the people I work with and their concerns, so that we can have agency as workers in addressing those.
And Jen, let's bring you into the conversation because, like I said in the introductions, you do not work for Starbucks, but you work for something called the Asheville Food and Beverage Workers, which is a coalition. Can you describe that coalition, some of the things you've done in the past, and how you got into this particular union organizing effort with the Charlotte Street store?
Yeah, sure. We are Asheville Food and Beverage United is a worker-led coalition that came together about a year ago on May Day 2021, and we are dedicated to advocacy and support for all food and beverage workers in Asheville. We believe in worker organizing and power in numbers. We know that we can be a powerful political force in Asheville because food and bev workers make up a huge portion of the workforce in this area. And we launched our first public campaign, the Fair Deal for Food and Beverage Workers, on May Day, May 1st, this past weekend. And I met Madeline just a few weeks ago when she came to one of our meetings, Asheville Food and Beverage United. We had been reaching out to workers at the Charlotte Street since we saw their filing petition on Twitter. But we couldn't make any leeway until we met Madeline and found out that they were having their union vote on May 10th. So we sprung into action, my group, and decided to rally community support to show up today, the day before the union, to let the Starbucks workers know that the community supports them. And I think
Yes,
it was a huge success.
And you, yes, and yeah, you, that's how I found out about this rally, because you posted it. And I actually went to a DSA meeting 2 months ago. It was a DSA social, I'm a member. And I said, does anyone have any interest in organizing a Starbucks store here in Asheville? And they said, well, it's got to come from the store. Do you know if anybody at any of the stores want to do it? And I'm like, no. But then I was so excited to see, this rally. And so I immediately contacted you and even dropped off my business card a week ago Friday at the Starbucks to try to get someone for the show. So Madeline, I'm very happy that you agreed to come on because it wouldn't be the same without somebody from the store, Anyway, so now that we've talked about how you organized, what did management do to try to thwart you? Because we read about all the things that they did in Buffalo and Memphis. Did any of that egregious kind of stuff happen here in North Carolina?
We were actually pretty lucky. We didn't get a lot of backlash from management. I'd say the furthest extent that they went to was just holding group meetings and highlighting all the benefits that Starbucks offers. Again, reiterating that we are partners, allegedly. Just a lot of very subtle tactics to get us to vote no. But we didn't really see anything as severe that has been going on at other stores.
And how about so far for you, Madeline?
Well, in the beginning of our campaign conversation and when I was trying to just organize, I didn't get a lot of pushback because I had a different manager. And around the same time that we had officially filed, we had the manager we had was replaced by someone new. And within the same, I want to say, week or 2 weeks that she was hired, we had private conversations one-on-one about the benefits that we have, the benefits that may come in the future, pay raises. And then she was very clear that if we were to unionize, we could lose some of these things. Now, I was very clear about my stance with her because I'm 20. I feel like I can get another job and I don't have to lie to save my job. So I let her know that I was pro-union. But with some of my other coworkers, it was a little scarier for them. And I do think that certain threats were targeted based on what people needed, what kind of benefits people relied on the most. I would not be surprised if there was some training on management's end on how to use fear to bust.
So do you think any of that is working? Are you worried about those particular people voting no because of those tactics?
I know that it's working because so many people have gone back and forth. People have come to me to ask questions and clarify what rights they have because something has been vaguely threatened, if that makes sense. So I hope that we have a majority, and I hope that tomorrow goes well, but it's definitely been back and forth.
Now, Olivia, in your Boone vote, what was the vote for and against?
33-2.
And the two people that voted no, did they tell you their reasons?
We don't know who voted no. Not trying to figure it out. That's their personal opinion. They're entitled to it. Bottom line is that we did win, and the contract that we create will cover the whole store. So hopefully this is something that they can still benefit from, and hopefully something that they can still enjoy, even if this is not something that they had initially wanted.
Now, are there any other Starbucks in Boone?
No.
We were the only one.
Now, have any other Starbucks reached out to you, any workers, I mean, from any other North Carolina stores after this made the news?
Not directly. We've been in other meetings separate from this and gotten to hear stories from other stores in North Carolina, but we have been talking today, and we would like to form kind of a something in North Carolina. We are in, kind of a unique circumstance here in our state, just with being a right to work state, and we can support each other, I think, better than anyone else can, just as we go through our own individual experiences and we're able to share those experiences. So would like to talk to people in the future, but as of right now, is not something that we have done.
Now, Jen, are you waiting to see what happens with the vote tomorrow in the Charlotte Street store before reaching out to any more Starbucks stores? Because we have quite a few in Asheville.
Well, no, I'm not waiting. I'm going to reach out again to people because I still know a lot of people who I used to work with at Starbucks in this area that still work for Starbucks. And one of the partners is actually starting to come around as I've been talking to her. So hopefully if there is a win, then, that will spur them on. And hopefully, and even if the union busting tactics works, I think that Starbucks attracts a certain type of person to work there, and we tend to be independent-minded, progressive, and I really do feel like their union busting tactics is almost spurring people on even more to want to unionize.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that. Like, how did you guys feel when Howard Schultz came back to be the CEO to deal with this? Some of the things he said and some of the things he did, like firing their chief attorney because he didn't feel she was able to stop this all from happening.
It was definitely a very intentional move on their part. I don't believe that Kevin Johnson actually retired. I think that he was forced into retirement. Personally, when I saw that he was stepping back in as interim CEO, I was fully prepared to lose my job. I knew this meant that union busting efforts were going to be ramped up. I knew that things were really going to be cracked down, and I didn't really know what to expect from our management team. So it was definitely meant to be a threat, and I definitely interpreted it that way.
Anyone else?
Schultz has also made many attempts to kind of drive the partners apart in like an us versus them manner, which is the baristas and management. And he has called the unionizing baristas things such as adversaries and outside forces, which very much contradicts the concept of us being partners.
And also, he just announced the other day that they were going to have significant raises. I believe I read 25%, but this would not apply to the stores that were unionizing. Is that even legal?
No.
So, yeah. So, what has been the chatter there on Twitter about what you guys are going to do about that?
Well, the NLRB and Starbucks Workers United have both launched lawsuits against Starbucks corporate based on these illegal union busting tactics. They are not allowed to deny raises that were promised before the campaign. And they're also not allowed, obviously, they've been doing majorly illegal union busting tactics.
Yeah, I mean, the NLRB just found in favor of the Memphis workers. The entire store was fired. You know, the entire union organizing team was fired, and that was termed illegal. And do any of you give Joe Biden any credit for the good appointees that he put on the National Labor Relations Board that has sort of been helping you? Well, I'm not a huge fan of Joe Biden, but I do think that was one of the good things that he did do. He's also appointed some great people to fight monopolization, by the way, Lena Khan and some of the others in that office. Finally, maybe after 40 years, we're going to start fighting back on some of these big monopolies. And that's one of the reasons we have such great wealth and income inequality. Let me ask you something. Speaking of presidents and presidential candidates, there was a New York Times article on the Starbucks organizers, and it made a big point of saying how many of them were either Bernie Sanders campaign workers or just simply Bernie Sanders supporters. Does that apply to any of you?
Yes, I was definitely a major supporter of Bernie when he was running in the last presidential election. As well as the one before that, even though I couldn't vote yet during that one.
Would you say that he inspired you?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, specifically to do this work, did you think about him? Like Bernie would be proud of me.
I think the most important part about Senator Sanders is the support he has, just how vocal he's been about his support for the Starbucks baristas. I feel like it definitely, since he's such a prominent politician, it puts the movement on the map and garners a huge amount of community support, which is very important for unionizing. Because with support from the community, it really just inspires hope in all of us. And I think Senator Sanders is definitely a big part of that.
Now, what about the Amazon labor union? I actually had Chris Smalls on my show 2 weeks after he was fired by Amazon, and that really spurred him into action. And little did they know, the man that they called uneducated and unarticulate would be the face of this movement. Were you guys inspired by what he did?
I think what he's done is absolutely amazing, and he really was thrown every challenge in the book, and still fought for what he believed in, and it has really paid off. And I really want everyone to be able to feel the way that he does, and see the big changes that they're making through the actions that they're taking. And it was definitely very, very inspiring.
Yeah, I want to speak to you about the role of youth because, you know, Madeline, you did share that you're only 20 years old, and I am in such awe of you. I did some things as a young person, but I don't think I ever took on anything quite that significant. I'm wondering what life feels like for young people today. I know at Starbucks, there's a lot of people who have college degrees, even graduate degrees, who are not working in their fields. I think things were a lot easier for me when I came out of college some 40 years ago to get into my field. And now conditions are just so tough. And you have a lot of people that would be maybe otherwise in professional jobs that aren't. And do you feel that that gives you a greater aptitude to be an organizer, or not necessarily?
I think that being young and being independent somewhere, I'm in a city that I'm not super familiar with, so the last few years have been a big change for me. If I were more settled, I don't know if I would be such a lead force in this movement, if that makes sense. I do think that the young wall of organizers in general versus the old unions is definitely taking a more active role.
Yeah, I'm in a similar situation to Madeline. I have only been in Boone for about 3 years at this point. I'm 21, I'm still in college. And I just feel like being a part of this movement has given me a little more hope for the future because going into college, as I'm sure many people know, the job market is very tough, and you have a lot of people in positions that they're way overqualified for. But this movement has, kind of, I've learned a lot, and I'm very appreciative of that. And I feel like moving forward, it has definitely inspired me to do more good, and it's made me more hopeful for my future.
I want to just put up a comment from one of our viewers, Stephen Roach Knight, and I'm sure that he speaks for lots of people watching this show. What was I going to say? I'm kind of getting to the last of my questions. So we've had over 45, that was the last time I counted, maybe there's even more, Starbucks workers, Starbucks stores unionized. We had one big Amazon warehouse unionized. The second one didn't work out, unfortunately, but there was kind of reasons for that. We don't need to get into that. Do you feel that this resurgence in the labor movement is probably one of the most positive things that you can see as far as social and political change in our country right now? Because I know I do.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. There's definitely. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
There's definitely a revolution coming. Something big is happening. It's started with Amazon and Buffalo, and it's growing more and more every day. We are up to over 50 stores now, and that jump happened within a matter of a couple days. There are more stores with election dates set, and so I'm sure more are coming very, very soon. And I really encourage everyone to just kind of sit down and research and consider the benefits that this has and the changes, the overall changes that can be made, because this is so much bigger than just Starbucks. This is something that affects all labor laws and just the way that labor workers are treated in general.
And there have also been around 250 other stores that have petitioned to unionize.
Now, when you get your contract, and one of the things that I read was that it's very smart that each store can be its own bargaining unit, because if it were much larger than that, then it would be more difficult. So the fact that you're small has been very helpful. What are you going to be asking for as you negotiate your collective bargaining agreement?
There's going to be a baseline set across all Starbucks stores. That's what Starbucks Workers United is helping us fight for, just to create uniformity across every single store in the nation. But from there, we'll be able to tweak things here and there just to better fit the individual needs of our store, and kind of be able to, I'm so sorry. That was the end of that sentence.
Another thing that Starbucks stores across the board are asking for is for corporate to sign the non-interference and free election principles, which would basically have them actually respect our right to organize and not interfere with any organization.
Now, what about salary? I know that Chris Smalls, one of the things that he wants to ask for is $30 an hour. What are you guys going to be asking for as far as salary goes? And do you think that should be dependent on the cost of living in the city or town you work in?
Wage is not something that we have discussed in general yet, and much less as a store. For me personally, I at least want to get at a bare minimum, the raise that was promised to us before we went on our campaign. We are owed that, and use that as a base pay and go from there.
Now, Jen, we're in Asheville. There are so many restaurants. There are so many bars, wine bars, breweries, so many places where people work in the hospitality industry. I mean, just think of the possibility. I mean, who is in your coalition? How many members do you have? And what are you talking about doing should this thing be successful tomorrow?
We have been talking to workers around the area. I've been going out and speaking to them directly and signing them up for our mailing list, which has grown to about 97 people now, which is pretty amazing. We got, I think, 30 more people signed up at the rally today. We have a few, we don't have it publicized yet, so I don't want to give out everybody's names until we have it finalized, but we do have several businesses that are supportive and willing to sign on to our campaign pledge that we launched on May Day, which is basically asking for a living wage for all restaurant staff in Asheville, paid sick days, and fair scheduling practices. And if this, I think it'll be really impactful if Starbucks election, if they win tomorrow, because even just a little bit of organizing that we have seen and that we have done has really been spurring people into action. The workers I've talked to are really fired up. There have been 3 restaurants recently that I've gone to staff meetings with that are working on delivering strike notices. So hopefully that'll be happening next month.
Wow.
Yeah. So just imagine if food and bev workers went on strike in Asheville, the city would shut down, you know? So I'm really, really hopeful because Starbucks has always led the way in at least giving off the facade of being a more progressive place to work. And when I used to work there, it really was, we got better pay, better benefits. I felt, a sense of dignity and pride. And I really think that Starbucks will lead the way for this industry as a whole.
Interesting. Starbucks workers will lead the way.
That's what I meant. I'm so sorry. Starbucks workers will lead the way. Thank you.
Yeah, and that was talked about today in one of your speeches. Is it you, Olivia, who talked about the workers? Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, Madeline, you may want to walk inside because it has gone dark since you've gone outside. If you want to walk inside,
I'm sorry. I'm having some camera struggles. I should have prepared a little better.
No, that's okay. Just as long as we can see you for the last little bit of the show, but others can talk while you're moving inside. Just wanted to ask for those who are watching who may want to try to do this in their own workplace, what advice would you give them? Let's start with you, Grace.
I would say distributing information to people who are a little wary about organization is definitely a big part of garnering support, because a lot of people don't really know what unions entail. They don't really know all the benefits they can get. But at least for our store, once we passed out that information and our partners learned a little bit more, there was definitely an uptick in support from our fellow partners.
Yeah, it's really sad that people don't know so much about the benefits of unions. I remember there was something called the American Spring. It was right after the Arab Spring, and it happened in Madison, Wisconsin in the spring of 2011, about 6 months before the Occupy movement started, which I got involved in, and that definitely changed my life, I will say. But at that American Spring, people came from all places. Tractors drove into the Capitol in Madison because Scott Walker, the governor, was planning to get rid of collective bargaining. And of course, Wisconsin and the entire Midwest used to be a very blue, union strong state. And I remember watching the coverage and one woman saying to the reporter, I don't understand why they should have such benefits. I don't have such benefits. And I was looking at my TV and saying, boy, she's asking the wrong question. She should be saying, why don't I have those benefits? Instead of begrudging them of the public worker. So, we've seen from the workforce being something like 35% and the entire workforce being unionized, or was it 55%? I'm thinking 1935, 55%. I'm not sure. You guys may be more familiar having studied it. What was the biggest percentage of the American workforce that was unionized? Was it 50%, 55?
45 is the number that's coming to mind, but you would honestly have to fact check me.
Yeah,
I just know it's gone down since then.
Yes, I mean, now it's down to about 10%, and only maybe about 7% with private companies. They also used to have pensions in private companies. Now they have 401ks, if that, and they're subject to the vicissitudes of the stock market. And I just read a scathing expose on public pensions and how they're being invested in all these alternative investment vehicles that are only making money for Wall Street and not the workers. And the workers have very little say. So it's really kind of disgusting what's gone on in this country in the last 40 years. Does anybody else have any other advice to potential workers who want to unionize their workplace before we end the show?
I would like to add on to Grace and talk about a little bit more what we did at our store. So it really starts with just reaching out to at least one person. Grace and I connected, and from there, kind of gathered information. We also tailored a document compiling a bunch of information, and essentially, because there's a lot out there and a lot of it is biased, it could be misinformation. So we tried to create a pretty as unbiased as possible compilation of information, and tailored the tone to be directed towards people at our store, because we know how to communicate with them. We know how they understand things, how they learn, and shared that information with them, and just kind of between us gathered some more people together and went out and kind of evenly distributed throughout the store, kind of divide and conquer kind of deal. And it was really effective.
Oh, I know. I wanted to ask you, are you trying to become part of a larger union, or is it an independent union like the Amazon Labor Union is?
We are backed by Starbucks Workers United and Workers United, but we will be our own independent local union.
Okay, so Starbucks Workers United is now an official union. It's its own union. And do they have a Slack group where everybody can go in and share resources and ask questions? And
yeah, we have a Slack group.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's not all of Workers United, but it's for our region so that we can connect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I believe there's one for both of the Carolinas. It's either that or there's one for the entirety of the southern region.
Okay.
Yeah, there's both. There's a southern region bit, and then there's also for North and South Carolina.
Well, I'd like you guys to, when the show is over, go into the comments and put any kind of links that you want to share, any Twitter accounts you want people to follow, Facebook pages you want them to like, websites they should go to, so that anybody who watches this show, not live, will be able to see these things. And then I will also put them into the YouTube show, which is going to be up on my YouTube channel. So, Jen, do you have anything you want to add before we close?
Yeah, I'll put our contact info in the comment section. If you're interested in organizing your restaurant here in Asheville, or if you need any resources, you need to find out how to address workplace issues like things to do with your wages, scheduling, anything that is work related, we can help you find the resources that you need. So just get in touch with us and we'll help you get started with whatever it is.
Yeah, my son was saying to me today, he came with me to help me cover this rally, that he was thinking of maybe starting something in his workplace. He works for a pizza place. And one thing I will tell you is they have something that I've never heard of, although now I understand it's quite commonplace. I knew from this reading about Starbucks several years ago that they don't give you the same schedule every week. Back in the day, you would have the same schedule every week. And then they would make your schedule, but they would only give you like a day or two notice before the week began. And this one worker had her mother watching her kid when she went to work. And this mother was now in danger of losing her job because she had to keep, calling in sick or canceling on her boss. So that came out in the paper, front page news, and that shamed Howard Schultz into giving more notice of the schedule. But what's happening to my son now is they don't even necessarily give you, forget about 30 hours. They don't even give you 20 hours. And if they give you 20 hours, they let you leave early if it's not busy. There's something, he gets on his schedule. It'd be like noon to NV. And I'm like, what does NV stand for? He says night volume, meaning if the store isn't busy, they let you go. And I'm just wondering, do they do that in Starbucks as well?
They don't. We're actually required to stay the amount of hours that our shift covers, just because it's a labor thing. But that is really interesting about the mother. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That is a huge
Say?
concern in the Asheville food and bev industry. And that's one of our main campaign demands, is because people can't live their lives when you don't get your schedule a week out or so. And then, I just had a worker where I work who was given a call and was going to be written up because she didn't come to work on the day that the schedule was posted that morning, less than 24 hours before the shift started. And they were trying to hold her responsible for working that shift. And that does happen an awful lot. You don't know how many hours you're going to get each week. You don't know when you're going to be working. You're just supposed to sit around and wait and live your life based on what they want.
Yeah, and I said when he went to interview for this job, make sure you tell them you want full time. And he said, I will. When he came out, he said, they're going to give me full time. And so I actually went in there. I felt like he's back. He's like 25 years old. And I felt like this helicopter mom from when he was a small child going in and talking to the teacher. And I was talking to this manager who was like in his young 20s himself, probably even younger than my son. And I said, look, this probably isn't my business, but it sort of is because I'm still supporting him because of this. And that resonated with him. And I said, why can't he, he keeps being told he can't come in and work more than 4 hours because you're training these new people. Why do you need to train new people if you've got this guy here, my son, who wants to work full time? And he said, because so many people keep leaving, that we need to have extra people. And I'm like, well, maybe people wouldn't leave if you would give them more steady hours. It's like they've already accommodated to this situation, and this is how they're handling it. And they don't care if they have steady, loyal employees. It's just crazy. So God knows there needs to be some change out there.
There will be.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you very much for joining us, and I wish you the best of luck in your union election tomorrow, Madeline. And I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. You should set up a Twitter account so that you can announce it so that we'll all know, or at least let Jen know, and she'll announce it. And you guys in Boone, thank you very much for starting us off and paving the way. And it's really been enjoyable talking to you. So viewers, please share this show. We need to get this out there so that more people can get inspired and do what these guys are doing. Anyway, you can share the show if you're watching on Facebook, but you have friends that aren't on Facebook. It's also on my YouTube channel, YouTube.com/Lauren from LA. And you can follow me on Twitter at Lauren_Steiner. And of course, here on my Facebook page. And Madeline has gone sideways. So that's a good time for me to end the show. Thank you very much, everybody. Keep organizing.
Right on.